The police suspected that Jeffrey's death had occurred in his apartment. Despite the seemingly clean and tidy appearance, ultraviolet lighting revealed a significant amount of blood under the carpets, floorboards, baseboards, and flooring, particularly in the master bedroom and adjoining bathroom. Analysis confirmed that the blood belonged to Jeffrey. This discovery led to Stephen Marshall and Sarah Bush being charged with Jeffrey Howe's murder. However, the case against them continued to build. Blue and green fibers found on the adhesive tape used to secure the plastic bags containing the victim's remains matched those from the blue inflatable bed in the main bedroom, indicating its presence during the dismemberment. A witness also reported seeing Stephen Marshall carrying a wooden bed out of the apartment and disposing of it in a large dumpster shortly after Jeffrey's disappearance. The green fibers on the tape were traced back to a green polo shirt belonging to Stephen, bearing the logo of a gym he had previously owned. This served as another piece of irrefutable evidence suggesting that Stephen was either wearing the shirt or had it in the room during the gruesome act. With the mounting evidence against Stephen and Sarah, it was clear that they were responsible for Jeffrey's death. The only remaining question was the motive behind such a heinous crime. The motive behind Jeffrey Howe's murder was shockingly mundane: money and greed. When Stephen and Sarah were facing financial hardship, Jeffrey generously allowed them to stay in a spare room in his apartment until they could regain their footing. He offered to charge them only a portion of the utilities, with rent being essentially symbolic. Jeffrey considered Stephen one of his closest friends and was glad to assist. However, this arrangement soon soured as Jeffrey felt taken advantage of. With the couple failing to uphold their end of the agreement, Stephen was reluctant to pay even the minimal rent. And what Jeffrey had anticipated to be a month or two of accommodation stretched much longer. The tenants made no effort to secure their own housing, content to live carefree at their friends' expense. Frustrated by the constant reminders about unpaid utilities, Jeffrey's relationship with Stephen deteriorated, ultimately ending their friendship. It is likely that Jeffrey eventually asked them to vacate the room and leave the apartment. Angered by this turn of events and determined to continue living at Jeffrey's expense, Stephen and Sarah resorted to the unthinkable, eliminating him. The motive of greed and financial gain was further confirmed by the couple's actions following Jeffrey's murder. Feeling unbridled freedom and impunity, they began stealing from their former friend. They wrote themselves checks from Jeffrey's checkbook, ordered goods online using his bank card, purchased new cell phones, and indulged in takeout food. As the funds on the card dwindled, they started selling Jeffrey's belongings, including his phone, furniture, and TV. Just days after his death, the couple sold Jeffrey's car, listing it online, removing the plates, and providing the buyer with a handwritten receipt. Stephen even went so far as to paste Jeffrey's personalized license plates over his own, fill up his car's tank at a gas station, and flee without paying. During a search of Stephen's car trunk, a forensic examination revealed traces of Jeffrey Howe's blood, indicating that Stephen had used his own vehicle to transport the dismembered body parts, likely hoping to evade identification and any connection to them. Cell phone data also placed Stephen and Sarah together in the remote village where Jeffrey's mutilated skull was later discovered. In January 2010, nearly a year after Jeffrey's death, Stephen Marshall and Sarah Bush stood trial, initially pleading not guilty and attempting to shift blame onto each other. Stephen eventually confessed to the crime. Based on cell phone records, Jeffrey's death was presumed to have occurred on the night of March 8, 2009. While Sarah was visiting a friend overnight, Stephen admitted to single-handedly killing Jeffrey, stabbing him twice in the back, and leaving his former friend, who had helped him in a time of need, to bleed to death. Stephen also revealed the reason behind the precise dismemberment of the body parts. He had prior experience in this grisly task, having performed at least 4 dismemberments for one of North London's largest crime families. The police confirmed links between Stephen and this criminal organization. It was this expertise that had initially misled the medical examiner and police into suspecting someone with a medical background. Upon pleading guilty, Stephen Marshall received a life sentence with a minimum term of 36 years, eligible for parole no earlier than 2046. Sarah Bush, while cleared of the serious crime, was found to be an accomplice, having tidied the apartment and concealed evidence. She was charged with obstruction of justice and sentenced to 3 years and 9 months in prison. Tragically, Jeffrey Howe's hands and facial fragments were never recovered. Sarah Bush later claimed they were buried in the woods, but she could not recall the exact location. Despite efforts by the police and relatives, the remains of the man who died for his kindness remain lost. Doris expected her oldest daughter, Diamond, to be awake by 7 a.m., ready for the day as usual, but that morning, Diamond was conspicuously absent. The bedroom upstairs was vacant, which at first didn't alarm Doris. She knew her daughter often went on morning coffee runs to a nearby gas station. However, as time passed without Diamond's return, Doris's worry intensified. Diamond lacked personal transportation, and the weather outside was a mix of wet snow and wind, hardly ideal for a stroll. When Doris attempted to reach her daughter by phone, it went directly to voicemail, an unusual occurrence. By 8:30 a.m., DeCoin, who had been living apart due to his hectic schedule, arrived as planned. The absence of any response from Diamond to her family's persistent texts and calls was alarming, especially since she was known for avoiding causing them undue stress. Their concern deepened over the hours, and despite reaching out to all her acquaintances, no one had any information. DeCoin drove through town in search of Diamond, but their small community offered few places to hide. Doris was overwhelmed by a spectrum of feelings, from dread to fury, fearing the worst had befallen her daughter. Diamond had never stayed away this long without any word. The distress became unbearable for Doris, who, after exhausting every option, reported her daughter as missing to the police at 6 p.m. The law enforcement team quickly prioritized gathering details about Diamond's mobile usage, contacting her cellular provider to pinpoint the phone's last known location via cell tower signals. A swift response revealed the device's final activity at 7:18 a.m., located 5 miles northwest of a tower in Tonka, Illinois. However, this information only provided a broad search area without precise coordinates, leaving her whereabouts ambiguous. After this, the phone either depleted its battery or was deliberately shut off, as there was no subsequent activity or social media engagement from Diamond. Her mother clung to the hope that Diamond's cousin, Giovanna, with whom Diamond had spent the previous evening communicating, might hold vital information. Diamond often confided her innermost thoughts and plans in Giovanna but hadn't specified her intentions for the next morning. Sensing the gravity of the situation, Giovanna chose to reveal a critical secret to Doris. Diamond possessed a second phone unknown to her family, used for internet access via Wi-Fi. This device, discovered by DeCoin in a dresser drawer, was password protected and didn't have a cellular plan. The revelation shocked Doris, who was unaware of her daughter's secret phone. Recognizing the urgency, she immediately brought the device to the police, hoping it might yield clues to her daughter's disappearance. Investigators deduced that the hidden phone was used for activities that wouldn't have received Doris's approval. Once they bypassed the lock screen, they encountered additional security measures, as each app required its own password. Despite this, notifications visible on the lock screen indicated several individuals inviting Diamond to meet. The investigation revealed that the 16-year-old had been using the device to interact on dating platforms, a revelation that shocked Doris but was not unknown to Giovanna. Diamond had taken precautions, advising her cousin to alert her at the first sign of danger, knowing the risks involved with her secret engagements. Doris had always been stringent about dating, especially aware of her daughter's inclination towards older individuals and the dangers of online interactions. She emphasized caution and the importance of skepticism when dealing with strangers, aware of her daughter's tendency to misrepresent her age. Despite warnings from her mother and DeCoin about the perils of rushing into adulthood, Diamond crafted an online persona that suggested she was older. As the search for Diamond continued, law enforcement expanded their efforts beyond the digital realm. They canvassed the Bradleys' neighborhood, speaking with locals, checking nearby businesses, and gathering surveillance footage in hopes of uncovering any leads. At Diamond's regular coffee stop, only one low-resolution camera provided any footage, capturing a nondescript dark vehicle and its adult male driver. With scant evidence to go on, authorities concentrated on this individual, meticulously analyzing the video in search of any detail that might lead to Diamond's whereabouts. Diamond's brother set out to nearby towns to put up flyers with a photo and description of his sister. For some reason, he was convinced that she had been abducted and taken out of town. DeCoin knew that time was running out and they needed to hurry. He blamed himself for oversleeping that morning and not coming home earlier, thinking he could have prevented Diamond's disappearance. On January 25, Doris and Jasmine, another of Diamond's cousins, went to the police to provide important information about Diamond. It turned out that the missing girl wasn't just getting acquainted with boys, unfortunately. She had gotten involved in something even more dangerous. Jasmine explained that on dating sites, Diamond noticed pop-up advertisements offering meetings with men on a commercial basis. It was a kind of business, and the high school student was very intrigued. She wanted to understand how it worked and learned that some men paid women to meet with them. No one knew how curious Diamond was or how long this had been going on, but obviously, the girl had placed advertisements of herself on adult websites, which was one of the reasons why there were so many notifications on her lock screen. Almost all of these messages were from unfamiliar men who had either responded to the advertisement or her profile on dating sites. Doris felt like a bad mother. She couldn't even imagine in her worst nightmares that her underage daughter would decide to earn money this way. But DeCoin saw things differently. His mother always knew how to balance strictness with giving her children some freedom. Diamond likely didn't grasp the gravity of engaging in such transactions. Diamond might have assumed she'd be compensated merely for spending time on dates, particularly with older men whom she thought would be more financially generous. At heart, she was exploring life with the naivety of youth, unaware of the dangers lurking on those platforms, unseen threats posed by individuals seeking to exploit the most vulnerable. The allure of easy money for social outings was a dangerous curiosity. Law enforcement was aware that many youths in Spring Valley found themselves ensnared in monotony, with their primary pastime being the digital world, a realm their guardians scarcely understood. This disconnect left many parents oblivious to the digital hazards their children navigated daily. In response to the escalating concern, the local police sought the FBI's assistance for advanced resources to access and analyze data from Diamond's primary phone, aiming to reconstruct her movements on the day she vanished. This collaboration bore fruit as they managed to chart the route taken by Diamond, suggesting she was in a vehicle, given the rapid pace of movement detected. An extensive review of surveillance footage from the area identified 13 vehicles, yet the poor quality of the images thwarted efforts to discern license plate numbers. An inventive approach saw the deployment of a patrol car equipped with a dash cam at a strategic intersection, which, after 2 days, helped filter out vehicles frequently traversing the locale, isolating a red pickup and a black Jeep that ceased to appear thereafter. Without immediate evidence to prioritize these vehicles, the police opted to methodically narrow their focus. Beginning with these two, further surveillance linked the black Jeep to another location along Diamond's last known trajectory, sharpening the investigation's focus on this particular vehicle. Simultaneously, detectives delved into Diamond's digital interactions, scrutinizing communications on her dating applications and social media platforms. A pivotal discovery was the last message Diamond sent on the morning of her disappearance, directed to a 26-year-old known as Gerald, or Jay, among his circle. In the course of the investigation, Jay acknowledged a romantic connection with Diamond but clarified that he had ceased contact upon learning her true age. On the morning of January 24, at 6 a.m., Diamond had invited him to meet at an IHOP restaurant. Almost immediately, she retracted the invitation, apologizing and claiming the message was intended for someone else. Jay responded with a benign smiley face. At 6:40 a.m., a distressing message from Diamond arrived, stating, "I'm dying." Upon discovering that Jay was the last known contact of her 16-year-old daughter, Doris was overcome with rage and despair, confronting him with accusations of harming her child. In her grief, she was prepared to cast blame on any potential suspect. Jay, however, provided a solid alibi, claiming he was home all night, engaged in video games, corroborated by a female companion's presence. Initially reluctant, under pressure, Jay revealed that this companion was none other than Giovanna, Diamond's cousin, adding a layer of complexity and confusion to the investigation without advancing the search for Diamond. Redirecting their attention back to the black Jeep, investigators uncovered additional surveillance footage capturing the vehicle en route to Putnam County, where after Diamond's phone signal vanished, either powered off or battery depleted. This vehicle became a focal point of the investigation, believed to be crucial in uncovering Diamond's fate. Tragically, The urgency of the situation escalated when, on January 27, 3 days following the report of Diamond's disappearance, the sheriff's office in Putnam County received a significant call before noon, suggesting a grim turn in the ongoing search for the missing girl. A pedestrian strolling down the pebble path in Granville Township spotted the corpse of a young woman in the ditch beside the road. Upon the arrival of the head of Putnam County at the location, it was clear to him that this incident was no mishap. The young woman's life had been deliberately ended by another. The wounds were distributed across her body, on her back, stomach, legs, arms, and hands. She was a young African-American female. The police chief recalled that a young girl fitting her description had been reported missing in Spring Valley, prompting him to make an immediate call there. The area was rural, blanketed in snow at this season, flanked by cornfields on either side of the path. The closest dwelling was a good few miles from the spot. Diamond Bradley's remains were partly submerged in water due to a brook that flowed through the ditch. The defensive injuries made it clear that the girl had resisted fiercely to the very end. In the wake of the grim discovery of Diamond Bradley, the lead detective made the somber journey to the Bradley family home, tasked with the unbearable duty of conveying the tragic news. The moment police appeared at their doorstep around 7 p.m., Doris felt an ominous stir in her heart, a premonition of sorrow. Her breakdown, even before the news was verbalized, spoke volumes of a mother's intuition. The return of DeCoin to a home engulfed in grief brought him face to face with a reality far removed from his hopeful assumption of Diamond's return. The crushing weight of the truth, that his sister was found deceased, overwhelmed him to the point of fainting, a testament to the bond and the burden of unfulfilled promises he bore. As the news permeated the small community, every inhabitant was profoundly disturbed. The thought of allowing their children to roam the streets filled them with dread. What if the creature was hiding close by, searching for its next prey? The investigation team intensely scrutinized the black Jeep seen in the security video to refine their search. The police consulted an automotive shop specializing in such models. A technician meticulously reviewed the video and confidently identified it as a specific model year of a Jeep Wrangler. Armed with this detail, the officers fed it into their databases, pulling up all the addresses and names of individuals in the vicinity who owned Jeep vehicles fitting that specific profile. After checking with numerous owners of similar Jeeps, the officers reached a home located roughly a few kilometers north of where Diamond's remains were discovered. A lady opened the door, stating that the black Jeep's owner had relocated to a different municipality named Stander, though she lacked a forwarding address. Stander, being merely 2 miles distant and home to about 200 people, made the task of locating the individual seem less daunting. Cruising through the county, the police spotted a black Jeep Wrangler in the driveway of a residence. The car belonged to 26-year-old Richard Henderson, who on January 24 had indeed ventured into Spring Valley, stopping at a gas station opposite the Bradley residence. He was the individual seen in the gas station surveillance video. Inside the station, he awaited a call from a friend but departed without the call coming through. The detectives meticulously scrutinized Henderson's behavior, noting his pauses and facial cues. They queried the name of his friend, and he disclosed Diamond, admitting ignorance of her surname. It then became an exercise in investigative prowess. The seasoned detectives adeptly navigated the conversation, coaxing a confession from Richard. He confessed to meeting Diamond that day but claimed their initial plans were aborted. Henderson said he left Diamond at a mobile home community, a location contrary to the direction of Diamond's phone's trajectory. This discrepancy led to suspicions of either phone theft or deceit. Seizing the opportunity to elicit a full admission, the investigators suggested a patrol car ride. Retracing the path taken by Henderson and Diamond that day, they embarked from the gas station, proceeded past the traffic junction captured on video, over a bridge, and into the pastoral expanses of Putnam County. The journey halted where Diamond's phone signal vanished. The only remnants of the young girl were plush toys and synthetic blossoms at her memorial beside the creek bed. These items, much like Diamond herself, were out of place. The minor, delicate girl was abandoned in that ravine, her vitality ebbing away. Upon questioning Richard about his recognition of the site, he lost his composure, tears streaming down his face. The detective seized the emotional moment, urging him to disclose the events. Henderson, overwhelmed, averted his gaze from the memorial, sobbing. His account was succinct, their visit to the secluded area was for an intimate encounter. Afterwards, when Diamond was asked to leave the car, she refused, brandishing a knife instead. A struggle ensued, with Richard claiming self-defense. He asserted that in an attempt to deflect her knife-wielding hand, the blade accidentally penetrated her abdomen. Despite this, Diamond allegedly remained aggressive. Richard admitted to disarming and striking her, possibly twice, in purported self-defense before leaving her in the ditch. Nonetheless, the autopsy contradicted his narrative, revealing over 20 stab wounds on Diamond, some even on her back. Standing nearly 6 feet tall and double Diamond's weight, Henderson's explanation was implausible. By the time they commenced their search, Diamond had already passed away. At the service, more than 200 individuals gathered, encompassing family, friends, peers, and educators from Spring Valley High School, opting for cremation. Doris wished for Diamond to remain perpetually close to her. The notion of leaving her daughter in a graveyard was unbearable, so she carried Diamond's urn everywhere, including to the courtroom during Henderson's sentencing. Richard negotiated a plea, admitting his guilt to circumvent a life sentence, ultimately receiving a 53-year term without the chance for parole. Doris confessed to harboring thoughts of ending her own life due to the profound absence of her daughter. However, the consideration of her surviving children held her back from such a finality. This is the end of the story. Like the video.